Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Enough to Keep Going. This is Tuesday night. It is September 5th, and this is episode 12 of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. We finally hit a dozen, and with me here tonight to round off that, I can't even make a baker's dozen joke yet. So we'll wait until next week, and maybe Prime can make that and have some other piece there.
Round off infinity?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, see? Rounding off infinity. So we've got Zeus Adamus with us and Swiss Guard. How are you, Swiss?
I'm doing good. I'm not sure if I should be concerned or proud. My 3-year-old has started to demand that we refer to him as either Mario or Meta Knight, depending on his whim at the moment. He's been watching a lot of the Mario Brothers Super Show on Netflix.
Aha. Well, as long as he's not talking like, the New Jersey accented Toad on the Super Show, it should be okay. Walking around and screaming at you in a cranky Toad voice, Mario. So there we go. We got a good eye roll from Zeus. So we know we're starting the podcast off right.
I was going to say, and there's our nerd.
Well, Swiss, if it makes you feel any better, my middle schooler was using the last few days of his summer to watch a little bit of the Super Show as well. So it's still just as bad no matter what age you are. So, but
I've kind of been. I don't mind having it on in the background. I don't know.
It's a gateway drug to Sonic cartoons, so it's probably even worse. So. Anyhow, but that is not our topic tonight, is not bad cartoons based on video games or bad video games based on cartoons, both of which are very sound topics to have. Tonight, though, this is September 5th. This is the night. This is hours before I could go to GameStop and pick up my pre-release copy of Destiny 2. Sitting there waiting for me. Only thing standing between me and Destiny 2 is you guys. So, but that actually is part of our topic tonight, is whether or not it's worth it to be part of that day one discussion, to be a day one gamer and to pick up the newest, hottest, most excitable moment, or to spend your gaming dollar a little more wisely, to spend your time a little differently, and maybe revisit your back catalog, or revisit games that you might have passed on earlier and now are on a discount. So tonight that's going to be part of our discussion, and as always we'll have our playlist as well. But first we've got my angel and my devil, or my devil and my angel, sitting on my shoulder, trying to get me to buy Destiny 2, or reminding me of all the hours that I haven't played in Breath of the Wild. So that's going to kind of give us our topic. And before Zeus makes any more strange faces at me about my props or my use of strange voices, I'm going to turn it over to Zeus and let him kind of talk a little bit more about this idea, the value of where we place our gaming time and our gaming dollar. And if there's things, that we want to emphasize in terms of what may be a better way or our ideal way of spending that time.
Yeah, so what was kind of on my mind when we thought this topic up was, depending on how you look at it, and DB, you should be able to indicate what camp you're in specifically, because you are this person. There's a question as to whether the holiday season started on the 25th of August, or whether or not it starts tomorrow. You can answer that now if you want to.
Yeah. Oh, right. Thanks. No, I mean, I think so. Right. Usually, Madden, the release of Madden kind of kicks off the fall holiday. But I think it has, while it is kind of the gaming for the fall, I don't know that it has carried with it the same kind of big name, big momentum that it might have in the past. And so I think thinking about hype and the hype train around games, certainly Destiny 2 feels like it's at a different level than Madden. But I think that Madden definitely got us rolling. I think even potentially you had, that week of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy and Madden and Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. You had a lot of games rolling out right at the end of August that just keeps rolling throughout September now. So yes, I will say that as somebody who bought into the hype of the new Madden Frostbite engine, but is still only 5 hours into his EA Access trial, of 10 hours, I think that the fall hype for games has already started. Swiss, what do you think?
I would say it's probably going to kick off with Destiny. For me, like Madden, it doesn't feel like a holiday type game. It feels like a football season game. So, by the time Christmas, and Hanukkah are rolling around, is Madden really on people's wish lists? I think by then, you've already burned through the hype for that game. I mean, it may be, but by then, the football season's starting to wind down. You're looking at the playoffs. So, no, I think with Destiny 2, it's the first. This I believe would be the equivalent of whatever Marvel movie comes out that first week in May, right? So, kicking off summer blockbuster season. So, yeah, I think we're there, and now we got to start looking at at the upcoming games.
Yeah, so I think, but rather than take the tact, and Zeus, you had talked about this, right? Rather than taking the approach of kind of just looking at our fall releases, I think there's some value, and you brought this up. There's some value of looking back at what we could be playing instead, or where we place our gaming time.
Yeah, and I think I kind of summed it up in the tweet that I just put out announcing that we're live on the show. Is so the holiday game release season is upon us, and we've frequently talked in the past, going back through his past history and lineage back through Band of Gamers, and it was typically a financial discussion of how are we going to manage the holiday season, and some years there was a discussion about how are we going to manage our time, and this is a little bit of that, but it's a slightly different bend. It's the gaming landscape has changed a little bit this year, or over the last few years, and I feel like it's kind of most acute this holiday season, where the longevity value of a game is a lot higher than it is than it has been in the past. The other thing we have is the industry has gone back to a time that to me was analogous to the early 2000s, where this vicious game release cycle of where everything dropped in the holiday season is no longer the case. We're getting some really healthy drops in the spring, in the walk up to spring break. We're getting typically a Memorial Weekend big AAA title that will drop, so often two, so you have to make that choice. We're getting things dithered throughout the summer, but again, another thing typically arrives in the walk up to the 4th of July. So we're getting these things spread throughout the year. And what I noticed, particularly this year, as I'm keeping metrics on all this stuff, is there's a ton of games that I haven't gotten around to yet. And so, last year I was a day one gamer, and I bought the big titles pretty much as soon as they came out. Having built gaming PCs in that time period also bled into that. But 2 years ago, when we were doing Band of Gamers, I definitely kind of sat back and just watched, and I was like, that was the year of Star Wars Battlefront, and I was like, I don't know that I need to buy this right away. We had a really big show when we came back after the holidays, talking about things that we had bought, things that we had passed on, and so I really wanted to have that conversation with you guys in this, reconstitution and new crew of what is your strategy for this holiday season, given the quality of games, given any day one concerns, given the concern of being in the zeitgeist, and there's one I'm missing, and any concerns about quality. Right? We've gone through these periods, and we've had a few this year of when a game launches in its multiplayer network code, it takes about a month to shake out. Right? And of course, DB, you and I were part of a crew that invested and played heavily in Halo 5 when it released. But we didn't really do that last year, right? So that's kind of a big summation of the topic, and I kind of want to again get your guys' feel of how you plan on negotiating the holiday season.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I really like this approach because it kind of makes you stop and think about how you're spending your time, and is it like you said, Zeus, is it a matter of how you're spending your dollars, or is it a matter of how you're spending your time? And if I think back about what I've missed so far this year, really, it's not just the Zelda Breath of the Wild amiibo reminding me of all the shrines I have left to find and guardians to defeat. There are games that I only played through GameFly, like Horizon Zero Dawn, that I loved for the week that I played it, but I also knew that as a mainly single player game, I could come back to it in the fall and pick it up for $25, $20 come the holiday season, and I'll get tons of gameplay out of what I thought to be an amazing game. I talked earlier this summer about my character in MLB The Show, right? And then the hype starts and I set that game down, but really maybe I lean into the hype of baseball season rather than football season and come back to that. It is, for me, I had a Twitter conversation with another gamer from the former CAG forums today as well, World Voyager, kind of talking back and forth about how we resist hype. He would play in the Call of Duty beta, always been a Call of Duty fan, but kind of gets burned out each year with it, but always buys into the hype. And I was buying into the Destiny 2 hype as a Destiny fan and trying to figure out how I balance that. And I know that I'm not going to have the time to invest in every big name release that the hype train keeps rolling for. And so thinking about where I spend my time, how do I do that is a challenge. And for the last year I purchased Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 1 on day one and really enjoyed both of them, got a lot out of them. The year before I did not pick up Battlefront right away. I did not pick up Fallout 4 right away. I did not pick up Call of Duty. I waited. That was the year we both waited, Zeus. So coming into this year, there's a lot there, but I'm also feeling like maybe I'm going to be waiting more. In part, I feel better about waiting for Destiny 2 on console because I've played the PC and I can kind of wait for it. But I also, one of the things that I did this year that I haven't done is I've kept a gaming spreadsheet of, how much I've spent on each game in each month. And, kind of looking back at that kind of reminds me of the amount of money that I've invested into my hobby over the course of the year and how much I haven't touched many of those games. And so
did you start that at the beginning of the year?
I started it maybe in March when my backlog started to kind of wind down. Also, I think I started it right around the time that I picked up the Switch, right? Like I was making a console investment. Right. I kind of wanted to track how much. And I did the same thing last year during the holiday season. And part of that was more financial. Like, I spent, I bought a ton of games, but my average price per game was $17, right? So I felt like, okay, I could do that. So this way, it's gotten me thinking about what I'm spending my money on in a different way than maybe in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just really. So we're both doing that experiment. You're approaching it with a little slightly different parametrics than I am. But yeah, that'll be interesting to compare notes because I'm not going down to the title level because titles don't tweak me so much. I have a little resilience to that remorse. What really tweaks me is the hardware. Right, what really bothers me is that when I'm looking at a list and I'm like, I haven't picked up that device and like played a game on it in like 6 weeks, and I'm like, I should really get rid of it, but I don't feel I've gotten my return on investment on it. So we should definitely set up a show to compare notes. But Swiss, so what dynamics are playing into your strategies for the holiday season, because part of my problem right now is I have tons of questions. I have tons of, man, Call of Duty is going back to World War II, right? That's when I fell in love with it, and I've slowly fallen more and more out of love with it as it's transitioned to the modern time. So is this a thing that I should go back into? Should Call of Duty be the first day one title that I buy in several years? DB is playing a lot of sports, and it sounds like he's considering, do you hang some of those sports up during the holiday season and focus on kind of the other AAA non-sport titles? Swiss, I know you have the Switch like we do, so I mean, kind of what are some of the factors playing into your decision?
Well, first, I started a spreadsheet as well to track how much I was spending, because this year I invested a lot in hardware. So we're
going to change the title of the show to Type A Gamers.
Yeah.
OCD Gamers.
I do keep track of, which I do go down the game level. I also consider the source. I do put in there, whether my in-laws, purchase the game for my kids or something, because that lowers my average price. But,
so now, are you keeping your spreadsheet based on game time invested, or are you keeping like an acquisition spreadsheet?
Mostly just acquisitions.
Okay.
I started to create a log about the what I played, and I haven't kept up with it, but
yeah, because I do keep, so on my spreadsheet I call them game sessions. So it's basically equates to how many days, and there's a little more granularity to that when it's a weekend day, because in my OCD fashion, I divide weekend days up into 3 segments, but it's basically game segments played on a given system. But then on the right hand side of the spreadsheet, I also keep like an acquisition sheet, because for this year, right, we've got to have a game of the year discussion, and so that's one reason why I've been tracking that as well. But also because I have that remorse of, man, I bought that game and I didn't play it, at any point in time, 30 days after launch, I didn't play it. So it's interesting.
Okay, so let's come back to our guilty gamer topic. No, I think it's a really, I mean, mine was a budgeting decision. Yours is a time investment. I think this is a really good discussion. It'd be interesting to bring Prime into this as well, to see if he's keeping track of anything. But for the sake of tonight's topic, in terms of how we're spending our time and obviously our money as well, Swiss, how are you using that spreadsheet to help you kind of decide how you're going to tackle what's coming out this fall?
Mostly it's just for my own edification. But as far as my strategy for purchasing games, my brother is 2 years younger than me, and there comes a point when I guess you really cross into adulthood, when you start having serious conversations with your siblings about like car insurance prices and home insurance, or why the taxes are so high. And so we're at that stage. And for me, with gaming purchases and day one purchases, it's almost become somewhat of a I only have a limited amount of time. I have a wife, I have kids, I have a job, so it's about what I enjoy. And if that gaming purchase happens to fall in a window where I'm gonna have time and money to pick it up, I'll pick it up on day one. But for the most part, I find that my game purchases cluster around family events or birthdays or something like that. So my wife wanted, we recently had another baby, and my wife wanted to do something special for the other kids. So everybody got a gift, and hey, it kind of came around Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle Day. So that was one of the purchases. And as I look forward to the holiday season, there are definitely some games I want to pick up, but I look at my backlog, and I'm saying, well, I'll go ahead and wait, get them for the holiday. I'm not going to purchase Mario Odyssey on day one. Probably I got things I can play with. I can, Santa Claus can ensure that arrives. And so that's kind of how I kind of look at things, / let my mom pick stuff up for me because I'm cheap. So
Swiss, one question I had. So because there's a counter remorse packed in here as well, where there are some times that you feel guilty about buying a game late, right? Because you're like, this game's really awesome.
That was what I was gonna.
Okay.
Well, not get to, but that when DB was mentioning about the style of game, that really came up because for me, like Overwatch, I'd be interested in picking that up, but that's such a multiplayer centric game. It almost feels like I've missed the boat on it, and I don't want to jump into it late. It's like there's an established culture there. There's an established, people have been playing it for a long time, and it would feel weird to jump in now. It's almost like I'm too late, like you said. So the style of game also dictates. But for me, I play a lot of single player games. So does it matter that I didn't play Zelda in March? Not really. I guess that kind of goes to me. It's almost the genre would drive that for me more.
So Zeus, do you have that remorse of a game that you slept on too long and didn't pick up early?
Yeah. Often, I have that about all sorts of things, right? Like so one of my recent pickups was a new camera, which I invested in for the podcast and my blog, and one of the things I did this time was so this isn't games, but it's just an analog. And one of the things I did this time, because I have so much remorse about my first DSLR I bought and certain specific accessories that I never got around to buying, like a battery grip or a screen protector for the display. And it's similar to houses, right? Which I think both of you guys are familiar with, right? I insist on buying a house with a finished basement because I know that if I say, oh, if it's unfinished, that'll just be one of my projects, and I know it'll never get done, right? It'll be 10 years later, I'm selling the house, and I never got around to doing the basement. So, yeah, I kind of have the same thing about games. Recently, it's weird because it's half and half, right? So recently on the podcast, we talked about when I went back and kind of did the revisit of Drive Club, right, and wrote some things on Gearworks.com about that. And talked about how the game was so maligned by gamers when it initially launched because of its purchase model and microtransactions model, much like Forza 5 was when it initially launched on Xbox One. But if people could get over that, right, and would come back and revisit the game a year and a half later, they would find a really wonderful sim and a little more clarity on like what you can buy to kind of surmount and access 80% of the content, right? I think the problem when it initially launched was you could only buy those things. A lot of things you could only buy onesie twosie. But yeah, so a lot of times I get that stuff and I'm like, oh, I should have played this game. I could have been playing this game for the last year. I kind of feel that way a little bit about Destiny, which causes me a lot of I don't want to say stress, but a lot of hand wringing about tomorrow's launch, right? Because I slept on Destiny, owned it, right? It was sitting here, right, for months, and I didn't dive into it, and because I got hyper wrapped around the axle about playing multiplayer, and I simultaneously wound myself around to giving up on the game because I couldn't keep up with the multiplayer because all my friends were dumping hours and hours of time into it each week, and I was like, I can't keep up with you. You're level 22 already, and I'm just not going to alter my lifestyle, right, to maintain parity. And for a little while, I got some friends who would. We committed to creating characters specifically just to use to play with each other, so that they would level up at the same pace. But not everybody held to that conviction, so I kind of wound up falling apart. So yeah, I mean, I've got remorse both ways. This is embarrassing to say as a gamer, but that year I talked about on the Band of Gamers podcast where I held back from those day one purchases and said, I'm not buying this, I'm not buying this, I'm not buying that. And then I wound up buying some of those things when they went on kind of incremental sales in the post-holiday season, in between time between Christmas and New Year's, and two of the things I specifically bought were Star Wars Battlefront and Rainbow Six Siege, which Gray and I believe, I could be wrong, Gray, if I'm calling you out incorrectly, let me know. I'm pretty sure Gray and I were like, we're not playing Rainbow Six. It doesn't have terrorist hunt mode. There's no single player. I mean, we were the classic get off my line guy. I mean, we were like the two guys in the balcony on the Muppets for months leading up to the release of Rainbow Six Siege. I think he wound up getting it pretty early, maybe even before Christmas or for Christmas. I bought it a couple weeks later. I have yet to ever boot that game on any system that I own. It is sitting in my Steam library, and I just like look at it, right? And I'm like, oh. Then I move on and play something else. I
mean, that kind of bothers me. You talk about type A gamers or whatever, but you know, having a game and having it sit there on the shelf and not playing it, because I feel like I put my money into something and then didn't get out of it, which is why Steam sales are so they're almost ominous to me.
They're abusive.
Yeah, I look at it and I like, oh, I get it, and I know I won't play it. I got like The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2 in there, and I'd love to play those, but you know, I don't know if it'll ever happen.
Right, and for me with Destiny, I mean not Destiny, but Rainbow Six Siege, it was a lot of. It's the classic thing that I constantly battle, which is I'm just not willing to put a lot of time in any game that makes me feel like I have to put like 25 hours of time. Like I just don't dedicate myself to any single titles. I'm not the guy who sits down and plays a game from beginning to end in a single chunk. Every rare once in a while, something strikes a particular chord with me, right? The original Metal Gear, I shouldn't say the original, Metal Gear Solid on the original PlayStation, Max Payne on PC, the original Gran Turismo on PlayStation. There are some times I get into these things and I'm like, and I do stick with them for 2-3 weeks, but eventually I always come out of that, or I finish them and then I'm back to my highly eclectic approach to gaming. So, excuse me. So yeah. So this holiday season, there's a lot of things dropping, but I don't. I guess
do you feel compelled to pick those things up, or do you have other stuff in your backlog on that list that you'd rather spend time with?
So there are some big things, right, that I haven't gotten around to. And so did you play Horizon Zero Dawn, DB, or did you pass on it?
So I played it. I had rented it through GameFly, so
okay.
I probably played. You know, I played through the opening tutorial. Got Aloy to, through the trials and off into kind of the first open setting. And so a couple hours in, right? And that's about as far as I got. And then I kind of sat on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I have not gone, I didn't own it. I only rented it. And so I really enjoyed what I played, but I was content to know that I would want to come back to it at some point in time.
Right. And that's a whole nother aspect to this problem too, right? And we definitely won't get into it. I'll just mention this idea. You know very well that Horizon Zero Dawn is going to go on some huge slashed sale for the PlayStation 4 sometime over the holiday break, right? Because they're going to be wanting to capture gamers that are kind of in the segment that I'm kind of talking about or talking around, which is people who are going to buy older release games and really discover some of these gems that they're going to invest their time in instead of getting rolled up into the hype along with everybody else in the holiday release season. And they'll eventually get around to those 2017 holiday release games eventually. So things that are out there on my list that I have a little bit of regret having either not bought or not played. Dreadnought is one of those. I know Swiss didn't like that beta as much, but the game has significantly expanded in terms of the number of ship classes and whatnot available. It's kind of in this weird place because on their webpage, it says that the game is still in beta, but on the PlayStation Store front, it says that the game is released. So it's a little weird. It's a free-to-play game. There are a couple tiers where you can buy in, but I know that is one of the games that I would invest like 2, maybe 3 or 4 weeks in of dedicated multiplayer time on weekends. So again, I look at that. It's free to play. It has some paid tiers. I can make the choices on how much I want to pay. And I'm like, do I buy 5 AAA release titles like between now and December, right? Or do I just download Dreadnought? And another one I mentioned is Elite Dangerous. That's gone on all sorts of sales left and right. I'll just bare my soul a little bit on air. I miss Gray, right? And I know, and I miss playing Halo 5 with him and stuff on Xbox and racing games and stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should buy Elite Dangerous and then I can hang out with Gray. And again, those go on sale at really great prices. Probably the last thing that's out there that I feel bad about not having played or bought is there's been a bunch of Dishonored expansions throughout this year, and I have Dishonored and Dishonored 2, and again, those are games that I've tucked away in my backlog and just haven't gotten around to gaming. So all those are really strong candidates that would definitely keep me occupied for 3 months. And so again, I ask myself in this day and age, as this thing is about to start up, I'm like, $300, right, expended just on games, right, over the next 3 months. Is that smart, or should I just, buy games that are in my wheelhouse like Dreadnought that I'm really impressed by, invest a little money in those and game on? So what about you, DB? What's out there that might be alternatives to you and being a day one gamer for a 2017 holiday release game?
Yeah, I mean that is the challenge, right? Because I was a week one vanilla Destiny gamer and loved that experience, even for all its faults. You can still look back on those times and get enjoyment out of it. But I've got a backlog. I started off this year really well with my backlog, and that kind of trickled out as the Switch released, as Horizon Zero Dawn happened, as all kinds of stuff, and it just kept spiraling into the new. And as you guys were talking about Steam sales, I've been able to hold off on Steam sales this year. But one thing I did do as a Christmas gift to myself last year was the Humble Bundle monthly package. To do for $12 or $11.50, right, to get a whole slew of both indie games and at least one big name title each month that has been sitting in my Steam library now, because I'm sitting there. So I'm sitting there with things that I really want to be interested in diving into, like Pillars of Eternity, or XCOM 2, or going back and grabbing some of some other games that have come up through the line there, Stardew Valley and other pieces. So I think this is where like the podcast as therapy really comes in. As listening to you guys talk about it, I'm thinking back about other games, some games that I have still sitting in my library and some games that I've turned around and sold. Right, last year I bought into the hype of Final Fantasy 15 and purchased it before release because I got a good price on it. Right, I paid $35 for it, but I turned around and sold it for $40 within the first week of it after playing a little bit, because I knew I wasn't going to get to it and I could turn it around and get something else out of it. I think about even going back to The Division, where I loved it within the first week, but got rid of it after that first week. And we've talked about that on the former show as well, right? Like, I have a penchant for the hype, but I also burn out of that hype pretty quickly. There's been few games that have kept me after that initial spark.
Right. And I know it's very interesting noting on your list. I too passed on Uncharted Lost Legacy, right? Because I felt like I didn't need to rush to get that game. There's a whole deluge of games about to come out. Surely I can flip back to picking up Uncharted Lost Legacy, a game that again is highly likely to go on some very good solid sale over the holiday break on PlayStation. So the other thing that came to mind just as you started with Destiny, I was like, again, I don't, while I had some regrets, I feel like the way I went through Destiny worked out just fine, right? I had it, I played it in dribs and drabs incrementally. I played some multiplayer, very small amounts. And then when there was a pocket of time when it made sense, because of course in between this whole thing I moved, right? When I was at a point where I could sit down and dedicate time to that game, then I did, and I was much happier than if I had felt like harassed and harried by other priorities, trying to get through it. Because of course you cannot pause that game, so it's not a good thing to play when you've got a lot of other things going on. So Swiss, what about you, man? What games do you think you've missed that you might get back to instead of buying new stuff this holiday?
Well, some of the stuff here I've already purchased and I just haven't gotten to. Nier Automata, I want to play, and I bought Dragon Quest Builders for my son, and he started that, and then somehow we got hooked on Splatoon again. I guess we kind of started getting the Splatoon 2 hype, and then just started playing Splatoon on the Wii and Wii U, and never got back to it. So Divinity Original Sin was another one that I purchased on a Steam sale that I want to get. So I feel like I don't want to let my backlog kind of get too large. Like that's kind of an OCD habit for me. And I've kind of just come to accept the fact that I'm not going to be able to play everything. And so if I'm enjoying my time that I can devote to gaming, playing stuff that I enjoy, that's a win. But the other two games that have been released this year that I kind of want to get to or purchase would be Splatoon 2 probably, and Final Fantasy 15. I have a feeling I will get Splatoon 2 eventually. I may never get Final Fantasy 15 just because I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to actually play it. So I feel like I'm probably going to be like DB there. But no, I mean, on the one hand, like I remember being caught up in the hype of things and wanting to do day one stuff. Perfect Dark on the N64. I could not wait to get that game. I neglected my finals to play that thing, and it was great. But I didn't have a wife and kids then, so. And now it's like, it's a hobby. And while it kind of sucks that, I can't be on the forefront of everything, I get to enjoy what I play. And DB hit the nail on the head when he said this is therapy, because I love being able to talk to you guys about games and just hearing about some of the stuff that you played. I may never get to play it myself, but I can live vicariously through, Zeus, DB, and Prime, especially, with the Xbox.
So Swiss, that is a perfect segue. So you're living vicariously through us in terms of what we're playing, and now it's our turn to live vicariously through you in terms of what you're playing. So why don't you keep moving right into that topic?
This is like actually one of the random times that I purchase a day one thing, because for the most part I end up waiting and getting it at GameStop or whatever, eBay, not 15, 20, 30% off. But I got Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle. My son bought into the hype because he watches a lot of YouTube preview stuff. And, I was into it. I knew I was going to get either Mario Rabbids or Splatoon 2. And since I'd been playing Splatoon recently, I wanted something different. So we got Mario Rabbids when it came out. And I started it and I had some concerns initially. So it actually opens up with a fairly extensive cutscene to explain how the Rabbids and Mario unite.
Oh, so you mean it's like a Final Fantasy game?
No. Well, the tutorial was extended. So as I'm going through, they kind of definitely hold your hand a little bit at the beginning as they introduce the game mechanics. And I felt like I was just moving them around a map to get to a battle. And there was a little bit of a twinge where I was like, uh-oh. And then I actually got to the point where they're like, okay, you got the basics, you can play now. And it's a lot of fun. So I'm completely glad that I purchased it. I've never played XCOM, but from what I understand, there's like a mechanic in the game where as you maneuver your units around, you can kind of use one unit to springboard your another unit to to a farther location. So like if Rapid Peach is, you know, in cover, I can move Mario to her. She springs him to another cover location farther up the map, and you can use it to flank people. And it moving the units around is fun. Like I do feel like, you know, they have like nice little animations when they get there. They kind of get cocked up against the wall and everything. And it's a fun game. It's clever, and I do feel like I'm applying strategy when I'm playing. So I don't get the sense that it's just like whatever, just throw them out there and then they win. You know, I took some time to select my weapon set. I have to switch between my characters. Okay, I want to make sure Rabbid Luigi goes first because he has this special ability, and then I want to move Rabbid Peach so I can spring Mario forward up there, and he's in position for this. And it feels like I'm playing a game. So I haven't had time to play terribly far into the game, but I will be doing so over the next couple of weeks, I'm certain. Also continued some Zelda. Played a little bit last night before I almost had the Switch fall on my face in bed. That's when, you know, with my phone, that happens a lot. And that's when my wife usually says, turn it off the light and, you know, go to sleep, because somehow she can stay up and I cannot. But so I played a little bit of that. But Horizon Zero Dawn, I also started that. I had some free time Sunday afternoon to with the TV in the flaming room and turn that on. And that game is awesome as well. So I kind of...
Zeus and I have been talking about this game tonight. Did you pick it up
Yeah.
early, or did you pick it up on a sale? How long has it been sitting kind of just waiting for you to dive into?
It's been since June. I got it on eBay. So I got my PS4 late. So, you know, that I had kind of a wellspring of, okay, now that I got my PS4, I'm going to purchase some of the hit games. And, you know, in June I had some money and I went on eBay, and that's when I got Nier Automata and Horizon Zero Dawn and Dragon Quest Builders. So it's been sitting there. I kind of built up my backlog really fast this summer, and now I'm still churning through it. So I felt bad that I bought my Switch, and so I wasn't going to like leave the newly purchased Switch sitting there while I jumped on Horizon Zero Dawn. I wanted to get into Zelda and stuff before I jumped back to the PS4. But now I'm kind of going on both tracks here. But no, it's excellent. Yeah, I definitely can see why both Zelda and Horizon Zero Dawn are considered the two leading candidates for Game of the Year at this point. Haven't gotten that far in. I've only been playing a few hours, but I like the combat so far. The crafting doesn't annoy me, and the story, you know, I'm impressed with the storytelling so far. An odd little thing that happened when I was playing it that never really happened before. My son likes to watch me play, so he's always there. Depending on how violent the game is, I may or may not let him watch, but for now I'm letting him watch me play, and he gets into it. That's fine. My mom happened to be visiting, she played with the grandkids that afternoon, so she was sitting downstairs watching me play, which normally she doesn't care about video games. You know, they're beyond her. And she got into the story, and after we ate dinner, she was like, well, how can I see the story now? And I said, well, I'm sure you can go on YouTube and Google Horizon Zero Dawn cutscenes or something. And she's been watching Horizon Zero Dawn cutscenes at home on YouTube. So I guess
great. That's really cool. I mean, and it is. It's an engaging story. The way they tell it, the way that it's set up, you know, the characterizations, that it's not a typical kind of video game story.
So yeah, but I told her not to spoil anything, that I'm still playing it, and moved on. But no, the combat's cool. I yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's different from Zelda. Zelda's definitely more relaxed experience for me. So I think depending on which game I'm going to go with, it's going to depend on my mood. If I want more of a tense, visceral experience, I'm going to go with sci-fi. I'm going to go with Horizon Zero Dawn. And if I want to kind of chill and enjoy my exploration, it's going to be Zelda. And if I want some strategy and some silliness, I'm going to go with Mario Rabbids. But I think my playlist, unfortunately, is going to be deja vu for the next few weeks. So you've been warned.
All right. So Zeus, before you go, I'm gonna kind of just tie into that. I've been playing a little bit on my Switch as well, and my sons, as Swiss is talking about family gaming, my sons and I picked up Sonic Mania together, and we're playing that a little bit as well. Not nearly as much as my sons, as they were churning through the final hours of summer vacation, and have unlocked all the bonus modes and features by collecting all the Chaos Emeralds. But again, a really well done game, and at a price point of $20, if you've been a fan of 2D platformers and not just Sonic games, it's a solid game. I played some, again, as we're talking about sports games, played some Madden. Played actually with my son, which was a fun experience of a lot of interceptions for both of us. So, but a fun time to play together, and also kind of a neat opportunity to kind of start to explain the game of football, why somebody covers which way, or how do you, why a zone coverage versus a man-to-man coverage. So yeah, it has turned into some good family gaming time. And then a little bit of solo gaming time with the Call of Duty World War II beta this past weekend. And I know Osiris Prime played it as well, so hopefully next time that he's on, we'll get a little bit more of his impressions as a Call of Duty fan and longtime Call of Duty player. It certainly looks pretty fun. I like the way that they kind of set the mood in terms of different, different classes and different nationalities, and a little bit of kind of full motion video aspects to it in terms of introducing those classes. The gameplay is, it is not as fast as Call of Duty has been, but it still feels, the kill death time, time to kill is still pretty quick as Call of Duty is. So I'd be interested. Yeah.
Did you play like the original Call of Duty when it was World War II games back in the day?
I've still got my PC box copy here somewhere of Call of Duty 1. So yes, so I was really interested in this. I don't know that the multiplayer is going to be for me, but the campaign may be something that I'll definitely be interested in checking out further down the line. Again, this is from somebody who really enjoyed the campaign of Infinite Warfare, but never touched the multiplayer. So I'm not really a good judge of the pacing of that, of the kill death ratios, and the gun unlocks. So hopefully Prime has a little bit more there. But in terms of starting to set an atmosphere, I think what they could do in the single player game could be really interesting. So, but Zeus, you've been playing another classic World War II PC game, haven't you? It looks like a little bit of Medal of Honor.
Yeah, so this is kind of, it's weird. My playlist is kind of a redemption story for all the things that we talked about that generated gamers' remorse with us. So I have been playing and did a game capture of a little bit of gameplay in Medal of Honor, Pacific Assault, or what I call Mo-Pa-A. Because its sister game was the original Medal of Honor Allied Assault, which is kind of one of the big titles that kind of started the World War II craze. It was a game that made you feel very much like you were in Saving Private Ryan, right? So I've been playing Mopa. That's also historically is the theater that I am more familiar with, because that's where a lot of the naval battles were fought, obviously. So I played it. It was awesome getting to play the gunner on the deck of a World War II destroyer as Zeros were coming in over Pearl Harbor. So I really enjoyed the opening sequence. It's got a few kind of hey, oh, by the way, this is a mid-aughts, 2000 game. A little, a couple warts in game design that it shows, like the kind of corridoring of what you're falsely led to believe is an open environment on Okinawa as you invade that island. But it looks lush and open, but the reality is you're kind of on rails and you're being forced down this singular corridor-like path weaving in between these various campsites for guard patrols. So, but in general, cinematic quality of those scenes were pretty awesome, and I really had a lot of fun playing. There's one scene where you go inside the Arizona at the waterline. So there's a really neat PT boat sequence right before this that is really awesome, where you are in charge of the PT boat in terms of directional control. So you're kind of weaving through all these ships in the bay at Pearl Harbor, trying to go and run around and help defend the larger capital ships that are all tied up and can't escape. And then right after that, you transition off the boat and you have to go into the Arizona, which that level is kind of another one of those examples of old design not aging well, where you were completely confused about where to go. So first of all, it makes no sense that you physically go inside the Arizona, as it's being attacked and is going down. But you do, and it's just a really, it's heavily corridored, but the signals on where you're supposed to go are very vague. And if you miss like one little, slice of verbiage in a character's monologue as they're talking to you as you're running through, you will miss the audible directions on where to go. And of course, I always feel like you never know how closely the gamer is going to be paying attention or how much they're going to miss. In some cases, I couldn't get that person to repeat the directions, so I actually had to reload the most recent checkpoint. And figure out where the checkpoint was before that point in the conversation. So, but overall, it's pretty cool.
That goes back to one of the discussions we had a few weeks ago with, what was it, Zero HUD design? How much do you want your game to be able to guide you? Oh, well, you strip away that information. Okay, yeah, if you're really on the deck or in a corridor and a ship going down, you wouldn't have those cues, but you wouldn't,
but you would. But then I go back to my comment about, but you have to compensate for the lack of reality, right? Because in that case, I could physically walk to someone and ask them. I wouldn't have the gamification design that didn't give me a cue to prompt them to repeat what they said, right? So, yeah. But overall, it was a really fun game, and I really enjoyed playing it. It definitely kind of took me back to that era of gaming in the early 2000s. So I also finally. Because Crysis 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, and I've talked about that a good length on this show and its predecessor. And I have Crysis 3, but I never got around to booting it up. So I finally got around to that last weekend. I had a good time playing it. The only thing I don't like is it walked back from the certain intricacies within the nanosuit design and implementation. So number one, I just realized this weekend. I mean, I'd always known it, but I had never given it a second thought. Every enemy that you encounter in the game always drops their weapon. So there's weapons strewn all over the place, right? In a lot of cases, within a set of levels, so within a set of 3 or 4 levels, they're all pretty much at parity. So you're constantly going around and checking these weapons and realizing this is just an average weapon. Like there's nothing special about that. You could find weapon, and then you're constrained on the number that you can carry. So you're constantly like swapping weapons out, and I would argue often for no really good reason. So there's that. The suit it just doesn't feel as visceral as the Crysis 2 suit felt. You do kind of a lot of silly stuff and get away with it when you absolutely feel like the AI should have known that you were there. And it doesn't evoke that feeling of being like a superhero and a tough guy like Crysis 2 did. So, but I'm interested in seeing the story unfold. So, and I played that with my Zalman. What is that thing called? FP1000 or FG1000, which is the Zalman gun mouse, which I always enjoy playing shooters with that. So it was really pretty fun. And it took me a while to figure out how to, navigate the suit, but eventually I figured it out.
So with the gun mouse, how much are you remapping controls to button configs on your mouse, or?
It's not that much, because the gun mouse really is just another 4-6 button mouse, right? That has analogs for every button you would have on a gaming mouse, right? So it's got left and right clicks in certain spaces, and it has the left and right push buttons that you frequently have on mice. It has 2 buttons that simulate those, so it's pretty much the same. I don't really. In fact, I never do any remapping just because I switch in and play with that mouse. I just leave the controls where they are, because it's DirectX, right? And Windows just recognizes what button you're pushing. So those were the 2 games I played on PC, and then I played and I think live streamed some gameplay. Yeah, I live streamed some gameplay on the NVIDIA Shield Portable, because I do like breaking that out and intend to continue to do so until that thing really has reached the end of its life cycle. But yeah, I picked that up and played some GT Racing 2, as well as some Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I think the thing I've made a realization on is, I think at some point, I think I can barely remember when it was, on some point on this console, on the Shield Portable, I finally defeated the remote control helicopter mission. So several times it's come up on my list, right, saying that it's the thing I need to play, and I'm like, man, I don't feel like playing that. Like, I'm never going to pass the helicopter mission, and I think I believe that I did it and have forgotten, because in past versions of Vice City that I played on other platforms, I'm pretty sure that that's a showstopper mission. Like, you cannot progress the campaign without completing that.
As someone who got stuck, yeah. It was not worth the frustration at some point.
Well, so the big difference, and I offer this as a possible solution, find a platform where it plays. So the biggest problem with that level for me on every other platform is the only way it really worked and I could be effective on it is if once I got put in the helicopter, if I changed the control scheme. Because the automatic vehicle control scheme for things like helicopters and whatnot in that game is horrible if you leave it in the default that the remote controlled helicopter picks up. The problem is that it's almost impossible if the version of the game you're playing on a given platform doesn't support remapping the controls, then you're just and PlayStation was one of those, and it was the same way on I think later iterations of the PlayStation, but I bought it for PC on a Steam sale and thought that I could solve the problem by remapping controls for it and putting those controls like on a game pad or on the number pad. But for some reason, I just never got it to work as slickly as in my mind it should have. Hold on just one second, guys.
Okay, hold on. We're gonna bide some time here.
No, we're good. Sorry.
Okay. Yep, we're moving on. We talked about some Vice City and control mapping.
Yeah. So then the last thing on that is so what was really good about it on the NVIDIA Shield Portable was that, and I don't know how exactly it happened, but the vehicle controls for helicopters in that, I don't think they change. So it makes sense when you get put in the helo, and it worked. So I found a console where it made sense the way it worked, and I was finally able to defeat that mission. So that is it for me.
All right. So Zeus, Swiss, any final thoughts? We are coming close to our hour here. We got a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes left. Any final thoughts, any plugs for coming up on the channel later this week?
The only thing I would throw in is Dark Matter is over. The season has ended. I won't get into the show also being canceled because that's a different topic, but the season ended on time, as was already planned on our end. And so the Dark Hypotheses, the podcast we do that covers that, is also completed for now. So the entertainment crew, Dave Petchy and I, have moved on to covering the Netflix original series, The Defenders. The inaugural episode of that went down this Sunday, and it's available on the YouTube channel. I haven't cleaned it up and dressed it up with editing dressings yet, but it's available. And we will probably record the next episode maybe over the upcoming weekend after Dave gets past the test, or we might settle back in on our regular Wednesday nights. So that is going on now. If you are just turning your attention to the Defenders, you can listen to the podcast and use that as kind of your companion app, if you will. As you binge watch it, just stop every couple episodes and listen to our commentary and join in the conversation by putting something in the comments.
That's great. No, that's both of you are relative experienced voices when it comes to Marvel Comics. So nice to have that perspective as you're wearing your Shield T-shirt tonight, Zeus. So definitely some good insight and some commentary coming on the Defenders from Zeus and crew. Swiss, anything on your end?
I just want to see if this discussion has helped you make a decision whether you're going to go Destiny 2.
What a perfect wrap up. No, I am not leaving my house tonight. I'm staying here. I'm not picking up my pre-release copy. Whether or not I totally let my copy lax and not buy it at all and wait for the PC version of Destiny 2, we will see. But in terms of the hype, you guys have convinced me. You have talked me off the ledge of the Destiny 2 hype, and it's going to be an enjoyable game. I'm excited to hear stuff about it, but I also am going to be very happy to play it eventually when I get around to it, just like the rest of you guys with other games.
So I find that funny because when I have something pre-ordered and I go, forget it, I'm not going to go pick it up, that's just because I'm going to order it on digital and download it overnight.
Actually, no, see, this is where the economics of my list comes in, where I got a good deal being able to pre-order it, and a couple other discounts there, and so there's no incentive for me financially to order it digital because I'm not getting any discount.
I was just going to say that's exactly what happened. I had extra money on my GameStop trade-in account, so I just went in, whatever, I'll pre-order Mario Rabbids back. And I decided I wanted it digital, so I canceled my pre-order and just bought some eShop cards, and I went home and downloaded it. So
nobody sees your guilty purchases on your digital releases. So gentlemen, thank you for the discussion tonight. This was a really good way to kick off the fall. It may be a little bit of a wet blanket for people who are gearing up for the hype, but I think that it also is a nice little dose of reality. As we are gamers, we are parents, we are family members, we are co-workers and employees, we are crabby old men, we are all those things, right? That being able to think about what gets us excited about playing games and being able to have the discourse about the hype, but also know that there's a lot of good adventures and investments and enjoyment to be had out of games that we might have passed on at some other point in time. So I have a feeling we'll be coming back to this as we talk about our playlists, but until we come back later on this week for the E2KG in 30, gentlemen, it has been good talking with you, and for now, until next time, this is still enough to keep us going.